The world has written a narrative of motherhood that's narrow and limiting. But that's not how motherhood was designed to be. We don't have to accept that narrative or stay in that confined space. As Christian mothers, we have the freedom to create a beautiful, fulfilling, and inspiring life for ourselves and for our families. We can live a life of purpose and vision in the midst of the confusion around us. I want you to move from being unsure to being confident as a mom. I want to see you let go of the overwhelm and guilt and embrace the freedom we have in Christ. Let's learn how to enjoy the life and the family we've been given. Let's create homes where faith can grow and hearts can be shaped for the kingdom. I'm Audrey McCracken, and welcome to Grace for My Home.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to Grace for My Home. I'm Audrey McCracken, and I am delighted to be back with you again this week. Please forgive me for being a little stuffy. So if I sound stuffy, I am. But luckily, I recorded this podcast last week before I was so stuffy. I have a special treat for you this week. I have my first interview. I've been doing the podcast here for about 3 years now. I've done 150 episodes or so, and I have never had a guest. I've always flown solo, but I'm branching out. I have a friend who I think you will connect with. Her name is Judy Fulmer, and we've gotten to know each other over the last year and a half, and I just adore Judy, and I think you will too. Last week, I had the opportunity to talk with Judy a little about homeschooling and about what she does. We're in a very similar season of life. We are former homeschool moms trying to figure out what God has for us now in this new season of life. And I just hope that you enjoy this conversation we had. We certainly did. We enjoyed talking and getting to know each other a little more. Just to tell you a little bit about Judy, she is an independent educational consultant, and she specializes in college admissions counseling. She helps high school students with SAT, ACT prep, and she's the founder of College PrepXcel. Judy and her husband, Philip, they've been married for 34 years, and they live in Marion, South Carolina. Philip, her husband, serves as the pastor of Ebenezer Church, and he's also a physics and engineering professor at Francis Marion University, which is in Florence, South Carolina. They have 4 grown children, 3 sons and 1 daughter. In addition to her work with college-bound students, Judy also serves in ministry with community Bible study. She also serves as a childhood cancer advocate. I just love Judy. She has a heart of gold. So let's get started with today's podcast. Well, Judy, welcome to Grace for My Home. It's such a blessing to have you with us today, and I'm so excited to have you here. You're my first guest. Okay, you're my first actual interview here. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and you just were the perfect guest to do this because I knew you'd have grace with me.
Absolutely.
And Judy and I met at Awaken Coffee Shop, the coffee shop that I run for my church. She came in early on when we first opened, and she and some of her friends, and we had an immediate connection. Both of us love Jesus. Both of us are pastors' wives. We were both, Judy, you were an engineering major, weren't you?
Yeah.
We were both, I thought so. We were both engineer majors. We were former homeschool moms. And so it just, it just clicked. And I thought there's a kindred spirit right there. But Judy, welcome. And I shared a little bit in the intro about you and what you do now and what you have done. But can you just share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. This is truly a joy. And I just absolutely love you. You are so dear to me. You really are. So, as you mentioned, I'm a former homeschool mama, and golly, we homeschooled for about 17 years. And I don't really count preschool, but we did homeschool for preschool too. So it's probably about 20 years, all said and done. But it was such a precious time of life. I loved my time homeschooling. We did have our kids in a private school for a little while I was caring for my mom. I'm an only child, and mom moved here from Texas. She was terminally ill, and she passed away about halfway through there. And through that time, and then I taught at the school for a couple of months, a couple more years. But the Lord called us back home. While we were home, I guess we trying to remember how old the kids were when we came home. Our youngest was going in fourth grade. Our oldest would have been going into ninth grade. We have 4 kids, and they're within 5 years, so they're pretty tight. 3 boys and a girl
In 6 years.
in 5 years.
5 years. Oh, bless your heart. Okay. 4 kids.
Yeah, they're not actually 2 years apart. None of them are actually 2 years apart. They're all less than 2 years. Our 2 middle kids are 19 months apart. They're the closest. But anyway, so, as Jonathan was in high school, one of the things I've always taken homeschooling, I always took it very seriously. I knew the buck stopped with me, and I wanted to make sure that my kids had a really great education, a good social network, but I also wanted to make sure they didn't miss opportunities because we homeschooled. That was something that was always kind of on my mind. I was always looking around to see what I could do, what I could offer them to take their interests deeper. And, when you're homeschooling, you have more time to do those things. So that was pretty cool. And so I think our oldest might have been a sophomore, and I had found this camp. I don't know if it's still going on. It was through the Celebrate Freedom Foundation. So it was an aviation camp with a leadership component. So they had this whole leadership curriculum built in. It was a really great camp. Kids actually got to fly Cessnas while they were there. It was awesome. But the whole focus was on engineering and aerospace. It was really good. But it was competitive. You had to apply. And so I remember he was working through that application, and he comes to me. I remember distinctly where I was standing when this happened. He's like, "Mom, what were my extracurriculars? What are my volunteer activities? What leadership things have I done?" And I think that's one of the things when you're homeschooling. These things are just part of your lifestyle. You don't realize there's anything unique about the things that you're doing. I remember my kids. Yeah, it's just life. They go, "Well, we don't do any volunteer service." I'm like, wait, let me think. No, yes, you do. You've been running the sound at church for the past 6 years. You stack tables and chairs every Sunday, every Wednesday. I mean, like, as we thought through what they do in our community, we served with OM ships quite a bit and did different things. It was like, no, we actually are doing that. But that question, he threw a bunch at me. What's my GPA and what's this and what, blah, 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 all these things. And I went, man, we need a high school guidance counselor. And I remember it struck me it was like a brick. I went, whoa, that's me. I remember, oh no, that's me. I'm it. I'm the guidance counselor. Oh my goodness. I felt this weight come down on me. And it was a defining moment. I said, you know what? I'm going to take ownership of this, because I knew he was on a college path. He ended up, 2 of my kids were valedictorians of Grace Homeschool Association. Like, I knew they were headed to college. And I said, man, I don't want to mess this up.
Yes, I know that. I remember with homeschool, as the homeschool mom, you're taking on such a responsibility. There's no one else to blame. You can't blame the guidance counselor or the principal or the teacher or the system, because it's all on you. And I remember many times that realization landed on my shoulders, and I thought, oh my goodness, I gotta figure this thing out. Because like you said, there's no one authority to go to figure it out. And there's so many different ways to homeschool. And so I was constantly researching and trying to figure out, what do we do? And we weren't sure. I would have loved to homeschool through the high school years. We didn't. But when I hear your story, I think I wish I had known you when my kids were at home, when I think you would have given me a little bit of comfort, a little bit of hope that, hey, we can do this, because there's
Yeah.
a lot of fear. Homeschool moms really struggle a lot with, um, why am I doing this? What should I be doing? Am I preparing? My biggest fear was not preparing them for the life
Mhm.
that I wanted to be able to set them up. You know what I mean? I want to set them up so that they can do whatever God's called them to do, and nothing I did would hinder that. And now when I look back, I know a lot of it was grace, a lot of it was just, God's good, and they're very resilient. But it would have been so nice to have somebody like you to sit down and talk with and just say, what should I be doing now to prepare for those high school years?
Yeah, for sure. I do that with my clients. I'm able to sit down and make some course planning suggestions and teach the kids some life skills they may not realize they need to do and need to know. One of the things that happened during that time, I told you I really took some ownership of this, and I did. I researched just like you did. I realized the buck stopped with me. And also, I think you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about that fear and that insecurity. Honestly, I think the homeschool mantra is, am I doing enough?
Hmm.
I know that was my question. And I've not ever met a homeschooler who didn't ask, am I doing enough? Are my kids going to be prepared? Are they going to be able to hold their own? Am I giving them enough foundation and background? What I learned, at least at my house, I really had high expectations. My kids were very well prepared. When they got to college, we had this whole conversation. I was like, now you're going to see how challenging it is. And they all came home. Every one of them came home and said, oh, it's so much easier than homeschooling.
My kids, my kids said the same thing about high school. They were like, Mama, we're over prepared. I was like,
But
at
I felt
least
like
you're not under prepared.
I did my job.
Exactly. Exactly.
But I think the thing that reassured me was when my kids did go into a traditional school system for that 4 year period, and I realized they were holding their own. They were actually at the top of the class, and they were prepared. So that helped me to help others. It's not that I would change anything that I was doing. I continued when we returned back to homeschooling. I continued on the same path that we had been on. Ultimately, God said, go home. He flat said, go home. And I was like, what do you mean go home? Yeah, I thought he meant invest yourself in your kid. Well, I rationalized that he meant that we needed to invest ourselves in our community because we were driving to another town for school, and really everything we did socially was happening over there. And so I was like, maybe he means that we need to get more invested in our own community, bloom where you're planted. And that was part of it. But the next year he was like, I told you to go home. And I was like, okay. And we did. And I had no regrets. And then I found out after the fact that our kids had had some challenges I didn't realize. So it turned out to be a really good thing that we were able to pour into them and help them overcome some of the stuff they were dealing with. But
And you
um,
brought all four children back home to
we
home.
did. But as we were working in high school and I was learning all these things about scholarships and college admissions and just prepping my kids in this way, other homeschoolers are asking me questions. And, I'm speaking to our homeschool group and I'm giving little workshops and I'm learning all these things. And then after our kids graduated, they did well. We were really, really blessed. They earned top scholarships and they got through college without undergraduate debt. And so people are asking, how are you doing that? And the more I talked with other homeschool families and even friends who had kids in other school systems, I realized there's a big need for this. And that's how College PrepXcel was born. It was really born out of my heart to serve the homeschool families because we didn't have anybody in that college admissions role really guiding us step by step through. And and again, most of these families were single income, so you want to get through school without a lot of debt. So, a small investment on the front end saves you tens of thousands on the back end. And that's why the business was born. I serve all the students. I serve public, private, homeschooled, anybody, but that's where it came from.
And let me ask you this, are there anything like if there's a homeschool mom listening right now, and maybe she doesn't have high schoolers, but say middle school or even elementary school, are there any things that you would suggest that she start doing right now? Like, what are some things, or even if it's not doing, thinking about, like planning for the
Yeah.
future, if she wants her kids to be ready for high school and for eventually for entering in college and those kind of things, what kind of things should she be thinking about?
Well, at the younger ages, older elementary, middle school, make sure they can communicate, make sure they can write well.
That's good.
There's a big difference between the written language and verbal language. And a lot of students I'm seeing don't understand that distinction. And so, not specifically in the homeschool environment, just in general. So, teaching a child to communicate, and with all of the new challenges that AI is bringing, students are becoming reliant on AI to produce their papers. And I can look at something and determine. I mean, it's easy for me to tell what was AI written and what was not, because an AI produced document cannot, it's not really personal, it's not thoughtful. You can't really work through your thoughts and creative ideas the same way through AI that you can otherwise. And then also, if you plug something into an AI to have it review it for grammar or whatever, then it goes into the large language, what is it, the language learning model. So what I'm seeing with students is they wrote something, they had it evaluated by AI. Maybe they said, make it clear and concise, maybe, check it for grammar, whatever. It's their product that AI tuned up. And now they've sent it to a school, and the school runs it through their AI checker because they don't allow AI produced things. Well, because it's been added to this language learning model, now it's flagged as having been AI. It's flagged as plagiarism. So
Even though,
there are all these
yeah,
nuances now that the kids are dealing with. So I would teach them, I would teach them to write well. I would teach them how to actually study. And that's one of the benefits of homeschool is that the kids learn how to learn. So learning critical thinking skills, learning communication skills, learning study skills, those are really, really valuable things. But then, just identifying a child's interest, if you can step back, because a lot of times there are things in us that we don't see, but the people around us see. So if you can help foster and develop those interests, because the colleges now, when I went through school, they wanted you to be well-rounded, which meant a member of 25 clubs. You know,
the more the
now
better. Yeah, it was like the more the better
the
mentality.
more the better when I was coming out of high school and going into college. But now the schools are saying, well, we want a student to be well-rounded because you do have a lot of elite athletes and other things, and that may be the only thing they do because it's so time consuming. They're like, we want to see a little bit more than that. But we want a student to really go deeper in their area of interest. So, say you want to be a nurse or a doctor. Okay, what are you doing to expose yourself to this field so you even know if this is something you want to do? Listen, some kids, it's crazy. Some of these kids are actually doing research with university professors and publishing papers in high school. I can't even fathom that.
Yes, that's awesome. And that was one of the things I loved about homeschool is it was you could be so out of the box.
Oh,
You,
yeah.
if you had an interest in something, you could deep dive into that. And we
Mhm.
had the time to do that. I love that freedom. And that's why I think it's so nice to when you can tailor a curriculum for that child. That sounds a little intimidating sometimes for somebody who's just starting out. Like, who am I to tailor a curriculum? Well, you know that kid better than anybody.
That's right.
And, and it's really not as what's the word? It sounds a lot more intimidating than it is because it's just finding something that lights that spark and developing something, finding things to do around that. And I loved that. That was my favorite part of homeschool is we can do whatever we want to do.
That's
Who
right.
said we can't, we can't do that. And but like I said, I do wish I had somebody like you at that time because there's so much fear on for homeschool moms. Like you said earlier, what if I don't do enough, and we all face that. And I think part of that is because we don't have, sometimes we are isolated and we don't see what other people are doing. And so we often think we're not doing enough. Everybody else is doing enough, but I'm not doing enough. What kind of things have you seen, like what when people come to you, when parents come to you and they're like, help us, what kind of misconceptions do they have about college and high school and what they should be doing versus what they are doing? Do you see a lot of that, like a lot of fear-based decisions
Mhm.
that, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I see the whole gamut and not just homeschooling, but in other school situations. I've seen some families who don't challenge their students enough. And the student could do more, and they just simply don't do it. I actually had this conversation with a couple of homeschool girls the other day, and they were talking about the program that they use. Like one of them actually said, I don't feel like I'm learning anything. And she said this program that she's using, she's doing some online school, and she said, I can go back and retake and retake and retake until I ace it. So I do see some misconceptions there that the parents want something maybe a little easy for them. They want something that's going to teach everything and grade everything, and I think sometimes maybe the kids pay the price on that.
I completely, I see that. Yes, I'm all for easy. If it's easy and it works, I think that's great. But I think you're right. I think sometimes we can sacrifice easy for actually learning.
Hmm.
And I won't call the
Yeah.
name. We had a math was hard for us. When I say math was hard for us, I mean, I thought it would be easy for us because, I was an engineering major. My husband was he was a math teacher. And I thought, oh, we got math. But I had a hard time finding a math that my kids liked. And,
Yeah.
they didn't necessarily have to be fun math, right? It didn't necessarily have to be fun, but it has to be where they will sit down and there won't be tears, That's
Right.
my requirement. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't think I've set the bar too high, I just
I
know.
just don't want to cry every day.
Right, them or me, yeah. And so we struggled with finding the right math. And I remember somebody said, oh, you should do this math. It's so easy. And so for a whole half a year, we did that math and it was easy, but they learned nothing.
Oh,
When it was all said and done, they passed all the tests, but they didn't understand the concepts.
oh no.
They could figure it out.
Yeah.
They could figure out how to answer the questions, but they didn't really understand math.
Mm,
And I thought this was easy and with a price. And so we kind of had to start all over, and that was another nice thing about homeschooling is we could just start all over, right? We could just mid-year
yeah.
say, this isn't working. And I think often homeschoolers feel like they're behind, but you have so much time.
Yeah.
And you might think, well, my son's a senior or a junior. You really like a homeschool year and a public school year is so different. Even my middle son, he struggled because he was the kid who would get up early, get everything done. So he had a whole afternoon to do whatever he wanted to do.
Hmm.
He would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I'd be like, why are you up? I'm trying to have a moment by myself. And he's like, I'm getting my math done and I'm getting this done because he wanted to go tramps in the woods and do whatever he wanted to do.
Right.
So when he started public school, that was very hard for him. He said,
Mm,
Mama, we waste so much time.
yeah.
We waste so much time, because he wanted to just get it done. And I said, well, honey, that's public education. You have to go with the group. You can't jump ahead and do your own.
Right.
So and that's an advantage. I think sometimes, when we feel like we're behind or we don't have enough time, you've got more time than you think.
Yeah.
You can change things mid-year and still end up in a good place.
I think there's a lot of reassurance that homeschool mamas are doing a really good job. And like you said before, they know their child better than anybody. There's nobody that cares more that that child learn than their parent.
Yes, that's that's what I kept telling myself too.
Mhm.
I would say yes, there definitely there are people who understand how to teach this curriculum better than me, and there are probably homeschool mamas who could do this a lot better than me, but nobody loves them as much as I love them,
Mhm.
and nobody is going to spend the time to find what they need more than I am. And sometimes that means finding somebody else to teach them. We did that for a
Yeah,
season.
we did that too.
Tutors in areas where I didn't feel confident, and we found online classes in areas where I knew I don't want to, like you said before, I don't want to limit them because we're homeschooled, right? I want
Right.
homeschooling to be an advantage to them. Not
Hmm.
I don't want them to look back and say, I really wish my mom hadn't homeschooled me. I want them to be like, yes, I'm so glad my mom gave me a jump on life.
Right.
And that's how I see homeschooling. I was very careful when we went into it that we're not doing this out of fear. We're doing this out
Right.
of faith. This is
Right.
a faith thing. This is a faith journey. Like you said, God called you home. If God's asking this of me, He's going to give me the grace to do it well. And,
Hmm.
and it may not look like everybody else's journey, but that's okay. We don't look like everybody else's family.
That's right. My kids took art lessons from a professional artist. They took a physiology lab from a critical care nurse. They took Institute for Excellence in Writing. Man, I absolutely love that curriculum. IEW.
We loved IAW. I loved it. And
They took that. I couldn't get my kids to write for me. It was, griping, complaining, whining, delaying, procrastinating, but they would do it for these women when my kids were babies and we were just thinking about homeschooling and, like they were preschoolers, right? I remember looking at these women who had teenagers who were in our homeschool group. This was when we lived in Aiken. We didn't even live here. I remember looking at them and going, wow, she's so godly. I want to be like her. I mean, I remember thinking that the life goals. I want to be like this woman. I want to be like that woman. Their kids are amazing kids, and these women just love Jesus. They are so godly. They just like radiate the love of Christ. I want to be like that. And you know what I learned homeschooling all of my kids? They got that way being in the fire every day and on their knees. It's like there's nothing really truly easy about homeschooling, but it is the best thing I've ever done.
well, I tell people that my not specifically homeschooling, but my children and being home with them all day, they were like sandpaper for my soul.
Yeah.
Like they they polished the rough edges.
Hmm.
There were things in me that God worked out because I was at home all day with my children, and I
Hmm.
didn't want them to have a mean, hateful mom. Like I wanted them to have memories of a
Right.
mom that smiled and a mom that liked them. And
Yes.
I thought, wouldn't you hate to be stuck home all day with somebody who didn't like you, or somebody who's just mad all the time or irritable? And so it caused me to be a better person. So Judy, what kind of like I know like right now my kids are preparing. I have one who's in college freshman year. I have one who is preparing for college next year. Um, it can be frustrating. Like last night, he sat down with his laptop and he's filling out his applications. He's doing the things that I've asked him to do for months. He's finally, his guidance counselor has asked him to do for months. What kind of things like do you run into when it comes to like how do you help with that process? Because
Mhm.
it can be hard. Like I'm not sure that we've started it. I know we've not started it soon enough. I mean, I know we haven't, but we've started it. Um, what kind of advice do you have, or do you see that a lot? Is it just us? Like, what's the deal?
No, it's not just you. I mean, think about it. Anytime we're working, well, we were talking about it a few minutes ago, and we were talking about teaching your kids to write and how they wouldn't write for us, but they wrote really well for somebody else. I found that to be true in this situation too. College admissions, this senior year is such an exciting year, and it's a busy year, but it can also be really stressful, and the parents have the wisdom and the forethought, the foresight to know that kids need to back up their schedule and, this has to be done by here. So that means you need to start preparing for it here and you need to get this done here. And the kids are like, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. Well, the parent and the student often butt heads. And that's a really hard thing because there's all the emotion tied up in senior year. And, mom's like, I don't want us to fight. I don't want us to argue. They're about to graduate and they're going to go off to college, blah, blah, blah. Like, I get it. 4 kids over here. But one of the things that I do is just like we were saying with the writing, my kid listens to them. They won't listen to me. Well, that happens with college admissions. A parent can tell their child the same thing and they'll completely ignore their parent. I tell them and they're like, oh, really? It's
Mhm.
crazy. But
Yeah.
it's the fact. It is a fact. And the other thing is that I'm able to sit down. If sometimes me just telling them, hey, we need to do this, we need to get this done, I want you to work on it and we'll meet next week. And they do it. Sometimes they either aren't sure how to get started or they're just not motivated. So I sit with them one on one and we do it together real time. But I'm able to get them to the goal, or sometimes mom and dad can't get them to realize the importance of these deadlines, but they are important. And you
Yeah.
don't want to miss them because missing these deadlines can affect not only acceptance, but award money.
So you can kind of act like the buffer, the
Yeah.
go-between, kind of like the
Yeah.
referee between like, I know we need to do this, but we're button heads trying to get it done.
Yeah. And it saves the parents a lot of time. It reduces their stress. And also, parents are having to do all this research and try to figure these things out. And I know it
Yeah.
because I'm talking to the schools and I'm working with the kids.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it can save a lot of time and save a lot of stress.
Yes. And well, Judy, I know that we've talked a long time. I don't want to keep you all day.
You're not
But
keeping.
I have enjoyed talking to you. This has been a blessing. What would you say to a mom that is, she's nearing the end of her homeschool journey, and she's wondering what's next for her children, but also for her? Like, how have you transitioned from homeschool mom to what you do now? And do you have any advice for that mom? That's like,
Yeah.
this, because for me, and I'll just throw this in there, for me, homeschooling was, being a homeschool mom was so much a part of my identity that
Mhm.
when that was gone, I felt like I was just kind of out on the island. What do I do now?
I that resonates. So here's the thing. We went through a tough time with our daughter when she was in eighth, ninth, 10th grade. She was very ill. Um, and that changed. She was in cancer treatment and she had some challenges coming out of that. And I had to completely change how I homeschooled her. She's great now. But all that to say, I was getting tired. It was a lot to homeschool 4 high achieving students within 5 years of age. It was a lot. And so there was this part of me that was so glad to be done, but there was this part of me that felt completely lost. I did not know what to do with myself. I struggled because my husband has worked 2 full-time jobs for many, many years as a professor and a pastor, both full-time positions. And I I felt bad not having a job.
Mhm.
Like I need to contribute to this family, but I didn't know what to do. I seriously considered going back to college because I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner, which is actually a great thing for the job that I do because I am a student of colleges. I am constantly learning. so that I can help my families. But I went through this period where I cried out to the Lord. I didn't know what I was going to do. I wanted to be productive. I wanted to help others, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And to be honest, I started a little MLM kind of business, which I still have. It's not my priority, but I believe in the product. And that came kind of out of the cancer journey was, I need to protect my child from exposures to toxins that could result in another cancer. So I started working with Norwex because it gave me a platform, if you will, to be able to share with others about toxins in our environment. But that wasn't my home, if you will. That wasn't my calling. And so through a whole lot of prayer, really evaluating what my interests are, my background, if you look at me, if you look at my history, it's funny when I look back at it. I have an engineering degree, radiological health engineering from Texas A&M University, and a master's in health physics. Well, while I was in grad school, I was asked to teach a class called Becoming the Master Student. And when I look back, I see how the Lord has just woven these threads together as a tapestry. He taught me and helped me teach others these basic skills that you need to succeed in college way back. And then he gave me the opportunity to substitute in the public schools and to teach in a private school for a couple of years and to homeschool my kids. So I have well over 20 years of education. And then, the opportunity to guide my own kids into college admissions. And, when I look at this, I'm like, so I'm a college admissions consultant. I'm an expert in SAT and ACT prep and all the different steps along the way to help a student from this early high school, late middle school stage until they're really even all the way through. They've received their acceptances, and let's make decisions about what's the best fit, and let's talk about transitioning to college. But it's all these other experiences that flowed into qualifying me for that, and a crazy amount of training. I'm always in training, always in training. And so I started learning some skills. And I think you have to be a little bit patient with yourself. But I'll tell you, I've learned two things that I think anybody in this position needs to think about. The first one is if you don't quit, you'll win. You can do a lot more than you think you can do, but we give up too easily.
Yes. We count ourselves done before we kind of count ourselves as a failure before it's over, right?
Mm-hmm. And you can say that about homeschooling too. But even this transition into life after homeschooling is just remembering that there's more to you than you realize. And there's much more ability, and others need what you have to offer. You have unique experiences that can really benefit others. So you're evaluating, what are my gifts? What are my talents? What do I have to share with others? In my case, I realized my husband and I talked about it for years. I could help other families get through navigate this process and successfully not just get their children into any random college, but their best fit college that's really going to help them thrive. And I can help them understand the processes and find the scholarships and do all the things. There's something in each one of you.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Is amazing. Let's pull that out and develop that. But the other thing that I learned was that the answers are there. And you just have to go find them. And even now, I mean, there's so many, many more resources at our fingertips than I had starting out, or think about 10 years ago. So many more resources,
Well, just the way that you've pulled them together and gathered them for people, that's huge. Even the resources, there's a lot of those resources that were out there, but you've gathered them for people. Like you've put them all in one spot. And, and that saves so much time and money.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because, where I would have, if I was starting from scratch, I wouldn't even know where to start. You've done a lot of that legwork, and then you have the wisdom that goes with the years that you've done that work for yourself, for your kids, and for other people. And that's invaluable. I mean, it really is. And it's very tailored. I know you work with more than just homeschool students, but it's very tailored to what our needs are, from transitioning from high school to college and making those decisions. It's hard to make the right decisions unless you have the right information.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't even know the questions to ask, you know, and that transition for moms, because once you make those transitions, like I said, I struggled, and I'm still working through that. What am I supposed to be doing with my days, because so much of our life is wrapped up in those kids.
Yeah.
And when they start to make those decisions on their own and we have to back up, it's kind of like, well, where's my place now? Where's my place? And I appreciate all that you do for moms. I appreciate all you do for the homeschool moms and the homeschool community. Just this week, I had an opportunity to speak at in Mullins, the Baptist Church in Mullins, the WMU group, and,
Oh,
and it was a blessing. I have a friend who is a part of that, and she asked me to come speak to their group.
that's great.
And I remember thinking there was a time I wouldn't have time to do this. Like there was a time I couldn't just go do this. And then
Mhm.
even as I was speaking to these ladies, I had an opportunity to share with them, there's ministry all around us. We just
Mhm.
have to have eyes open to see. And once we're released from one assignment, and that's how I feel like homeschooling my children was an assignment. And
Mhm.
once we're released from that assignment or completed that assignment, we have to have eyes to see where's my next assignment? Where's God sending me now? And
Mhm.
he's been showing me, Audrey, there's ministry all around you.
Oh, yeah.
It's not always packaged neatly, there's not always a neon sign over it, but there are needs that you are uniquely created to meet.
Yeah.
You have to find your people. You have to find your people. You have to find, what God, what have you put me here for this time
Yeah.
to do? And share that gift. And like you said, that's a gift. That's a gift
Mhm.
that God's given you, but it's also a gift. You're a gift that God's given us. And thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing with our group today. We'll have you back on again and talk
I would
about
love
other
it.
things. And I tell you what, before we go,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Mhm.
Why don't you pray for these ladies that are listening today and just searching for God's plan for their life? Just pray that, God would open up the right doors.
Yeah, absolutely. Heavenly Father, oh, we just love you. And we thank you, Lord, that you are sovereign and you have this plan, this perfect, perfect plan. We just thank you that we can come before your throne of grace
Yes.
because it is a privilege and an honor, and we bless your name. We do thank you that you have this plan, and it's a good, good plan for us, a plan to bless us and give us a future and a hope. And
Yes.
Father, for a woman who may be coming to the end of her homeschool journey, wherever that is along the way of age with her children, Lord, I just pray that you would speak into her heart and give her some guidance and some direction. Reassure her that you see her because you do. Reassure her that you know the call of her heart and that you will use her to bless and minister to others. These transitions, even though they're uncomfortable, they can be very, very fruitful. And Lord, I thank you that you give us the opportunity to rest a little bit in you and just come back, come back to you and just sit in your lap
Yes.
and be held. So I just pray that you would do that for the woman who is in this position today, who's looking for the next step, because you know what that step is. And you're faithful to show us. So I thank you, Lord, that you guide and you direct, and I pray that you would do that for her today. And I thank you so much for Audrey and her ministry. Thank you for this podcast. Thank you for blessing it mightily. And I just pray that you will continue to grow it and to bless it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I agree. Thank you. Thank you, Judy.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode today and will join me here again next week. You can find more encouragement on my blog at graceformyhome.com. God bless. Bye-bye.